You can't sit there. Kids for you.
That hasn't turned the ring camera on. This is hilarious. This is where I watched down in the loo. They've got out there. That's why. Update. Yeah, so I'll flew down there, reading the paper, and lose 1 pound or whatever. I'll be fine.
Clean the table.
She's constantly off.
As well, she's got.
You know, some dogs are just like some breed. Yeah.
You know, saying a Labrador like.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, that.
No, look. No.
No.
Right.
Recording in progress.
It's gone quiet. I think we're ready to start. The anticipation. Do we have anyone online, Sam? Are you holding back, waiting to let them in? Okay. Hi, everybody. Great. So I think we've got a few people joining online from various agencies as part of AMIN. Just let me know when we're ready to kick off. So quick sound check. Can everyone online hear okay? Few thumbs up, got nodding and smile from Lucy. Thank you very much. So bit of a special team meeting this week. This is something we do at Strategic. Every 2 weeks, we have an all hands session. And Mike from Brandigo just happened to be in London for the week and has very kindly offered to share a session with us today about his work and experience marketing in China, which will be incredibly exciting. So a little bit different this week. We won't have time to go through our good news from the last kind of couple of weeks. I'm going to hand over to Mike momentarily. And I've got a very short session for those that are staying on after Mike's call, where we'll just be talking about some key outside world news. And then there's a couple of really exciting updates from both Louise and Nick. So we're hoping to bring the whole session into an hour still today, but I know a few of you here will hopefully have got a little bit of a runway if we need to go all the way up till 1:30. So special thank you and welcome to those who have joined us online. Without further ado, I'll introduce Mike Golden from Brandigo to talk us through his experience.
Makes sense. Okay. Great.
Round of applause for Mike.
Thanks, everyone. It's so great to be here, and we have a bunch of our friends online joining from a few from APAC as well. So that's really great. Let's see. All right. So today I'm going to talk a bit about intro to China, what it's all about there, a little bit about my past and my history and how I got there, and then some bits about China marketing. We have some time at the end, hopefully, for some questions. So feel free to ask anything you want. I mean, people are generally curious about this kind of stuff. I realize it's lunchtime, so you have to be a bit of a monk today, I guess, and just look at your rice. So appreciate your patience. There's a lot of myths about China, and especially around the marketing and the people and what's going on. I feel it's stronger in the US than the UK. these crazy myths, but some of the myths that I think are kind of interesting are one is that people think it's just one big place and everyone's kind of the same. It's not, it's such a massively huge country with a huge population. You've got first tier cities like Beijing and Shanghai, second tier cities, third tier cities. You have 56 ethnic minorities, actually. So it's actually a very huge and varied place. And that's first myth. The second myth that people talk about is that maybe Chinese people only care about price. Let's go for the cheapest thing. And that's not true. This is the Supreme store that opened in Shanghai, and you get massive crowds. Chinese people love brands, and they're actually very brand loyal. So there's a lot of studies about that. They're also price sensitive. So those two things can live at the same time. People think China is really cheap. Our clients, when they come into China, they think it should be really cheap. It's not. And they're always shocked and surprised. This is funny. This is a real estate listing. That's like in my compound, actually. And this is like a 1-bedroom place for 8.6 million RMB for 2 bedrooms, which is something like £1 million. And so it's expensive. And the one above that is like 1.7 million pounds for a 4-bedroom. Yeah. I mean, you don't think China's going to be like that, right? And this isn't like a villa or an expat compound. This is just a flat, in like a pretty nice flat, but still it's a flat. So people are shocked. And, when we give them our pricing structure and try to explain to them that it's not just this cheap labor manufacturing place anymore, they're pretty surprised. I mean, I think the average income right now is something like 1,200 to 1,500 pounds per month, which is still, I mean, that's the nationwide. It's not low. So people are shocked. And in Shanghai, it's higher. It's getting close to 2,000 pounds a month average. So in our sector, in marketing, it's more than that. People think that China is the copycat place. And that's changed a lot. I was just talking with Sam about DJI stuff. So yeah, these 2 slides, this is a Xiaomi car. I think it's a brand new EV car that's come out. As you know, China's the leader in EV. Super cool. I think it's coming in on like almost half of the cars now are EV. So global leading. And then you have the DJI drone here, which is like, according to Sam, the expert, is like, cutting edge, good stuff. So, China's changed incredibly in the last 20 plus years I've been there, and becoming the leader in innovation has been, really surprising for some. But enough about China, let's talk about me. So I think my story is kind of funny. I'm from Maine. So this is a lovely lighthouse, Nubble Light in Maine, little quaint town on the seaside. Then I got into martial arts. So there I am trying to kick some guy in the head. I think he beat me up after that. This is a long time ago. And really into karate, was doing all that stuff. And then I went to university and actually studied Asian studies. And I kind of hit the mark, but missed the mark because I was actually a Japanese studies major. So it tells you how old I am. And then along the lines, I was also a US naval officer, which is kind of random. And then I moved to Japan. And in Japan, besides eating and drinking a lot, I got my first job, and it was selling Quark Express. Does anyone remember that? The old schoolers? Yeah, right. So that's like the precursor of InDesign, right? And if you were doing a magazine or any type of layout work, you had to use Quark Express. It was the only one. And so my first job was actually selling it, going around Japan, going to stores and selling like physical boxes of it. Pretty random. And then I moved into marketing. Loved marketing, and after 4 years decided that I'd pretty much needed to take a break from Japan, and went back to the US, got into an MBA program. So I studied at Berkeley, which was great, but then decided that I don't want to work for Silicon Valley, like anywhere near there. I don't want to do any of that stuff. So a buddy of mine said, hey, why don't you come to China and we'll start a business? And I was like, that sounds good. So then I moved to China, and My wife was like, don't use that photo. That's not what Chinese people look like. I'm like, "Meh." And we had this great idea that we would start a magazine called China Life. Has anyone done any publishing in magazines or anything like that? Yeah, it's the worst business ever. So we did 6 issues and then we pulled the plug. But after those 6 issues, somehow we had enough ideas around marketing stuff. And my wife to be said, hey, why don't you start a marketing agency? And I was like, good idea, we'll do that. And this is 2002 or 2004, that was. At the time, everything's open in China. You can kind of do anything. So we said, hey, what the hell? We'll start a marketing agency. We got one phone call. And that phone call, oh, yeah, it's called Smith China. That was the original name of Brandigo. It's actually the same agency. We just renamed. Hooters was our first call. So now I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, we represent Costco and Maersk and Henkel and all these serious companies, but actually it started like that. Pretty embarrassing actually, but a great case, and everyone was trying to come to China, so we took advantage of that. And after Hooters, we eventually renamed ourselves to Brandigo. And probably the biggest case that we've done so far is our work for Costco. So we did all of Costco's PR, influencer, and we still run all of their social media in China. This was the opening of the first Costco in Shanghai. It was epic. It shut down the entire district. I had friends who have kids in school in that district, and they called and they were like, I can't pick my kid up because the road is clogged because of Costco. And I was like, yes, done it. Sorry about your child. She'll get over it. So it's been like part of it. But most of our cases right now are B2B related, to be honest. Some food and beverage. And yeah, after COVID, I went to Thailand for a year and took a break. Got unkempt, kind of hairy beard action, and then came back. And in China, I'm living with my wife, who's Shanghainese, and my daughter, who's 14, going on 20, and a cat and our lovely dog, Cinnamon. Oh, he's so cute. He's a corgi. So, yeah. So that's kind of my brief gist. Let's get back into China stuff. So, Chuck passed away, sadly. This is just the background slide for people who don't like numbers. You can look at that. China is massively important. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the slide. Don't worry. I know my audience really well. China's massive, right? We all know that. The factories are actually moving away from human labor and getting into automation more than anywhere else in the world. Massive trade surpluses. The UK is second largest import market for goods. So very important for the UK. And your PM came over and visited with a delegation. So trying to find a balance between different export partners. And just a huge amount of trade between the two countries. So automotive, pharma, education, financial services. We've worked for the UK Department for International Trade. We've done major cases to import British gin, which is quite cool. Great case. I don't remember much. It was fuzzy. But very important market. And China still matters. And, people are saying, okay, well, let's move our factories to Vietnam or to India. Of course, that's happening a bit. But still, in the end of the day, the supply chain in China, it's impossible to compete with. And India and Vietnam, not quite there yet. So I think we've had this year a lot of clients coming back and a lot of new interest, a lot of inbound leads of people who realize, hey, okay, China is important. The US is complicated. So I think we have a great opportunity. We have a new UK client that just started. That's a listed company very recently. So, in the back of your mind, you can think about which clients do I have and how can I get them to China? Because they're probably already there in China, or they maybe should be there. So maybe today there's a few ideas that you can use. China is not this old-fashioned, crazy place that is in some people's heads. They've just started this, but you can start to pay with your palm now, and you just hover it over. It's crazy. You also have some shopping where you can just put the stuff in the bag and leave, and it counts that. This is WeChat. You've all heard of WeChat, and people are like, well, I think it's like WhatsApp. It's not like WhatsApp at all. It's got everything in there. You can basically have mini apps within WeChat, so you don't need to download separate apps on your phone. It's all within WeChat. So I've got these apps in my phone that are like everything from the China Eastern app to my gym app to the delivery app. Everything's in there within the WeChat environment. Next to it, I've got my clinic or my hospital, and all my health records are in there. They can't see it. There's strong privacy protections. But they've even got like an AI layer on top of my health records that deciphers all of my health results from my last physical, which is pretty cool. Next to it, I'm a member of the British Chamber of Commerce, and they send out the regular updates, also comes into my WeChat. And then on the far right side is what you would think of with WhatsApp, just the groups with your friends and family of chit-chatting. And most people, even with their clients, are using WeChat with their clients, with their suppliers, with their partners. It's the most natural way to communicate. So even though we're like, hey, can you please use email so that we have like an audit trail and know what's going on? You know, the Chinese want to use WeChat, and they'll end up just using WeChat for that stuff. So that's the natural way for Chinese. It's a super app. Live streaming is massive in China, just completely massive. It's all day long, every channel, tons of live streaming, selling millions of dollars of goods. Ordering stuff, I think the most convenient thing about living in Shanghai, at least, is when you order something within 30 minutes, it's generally there. So this is Aldi grocery store. And I can order something, and in 30 minutes, I've got all the groceries in my house, which is crazy. You can order food, all that stuff. As I mentioned before, we have EVs, or cutting edge. This is only like 10,000 pounds for this brand new, I think it's a Xiaomi. Oh no, this is a BYD EV. Super cheap. Factory automation is on the cutting edge. And then now they're starting with the autonomous vehicles. So we just got a new client actually that's helping to brand their autonomous vehicle brand, which is going to be super cool. And they're going to roll those out as taxis. So that's coming fast. As marketers, we kind of have the same challenges that you do. So we have pricing pressure is very tough, especially in China. There is always a cheaper person. There's always a cheaper agency doing it. And I think you guys also have the same pressures for agencies. The digital clutter is worse than anywhere in the world. You're just getting bombarded all day long with WeChat stuff. You have a very complex buyer journey. A lot of the stuff is blocked in China. So for example, there's no LinkedIn, and there's no equivalent of LinkedIn. So someone asks you to do like an ABM campaign or account-based marketing campaign, there's kind of no way to do it. So we have very complicated buyer journeys. And then of course, AI platforms. The AI platforms in China are completely different. You've heard of DeepSeek, I think, and there's 5 or 6 other key platforms, and everyone's kind of figuring out what to do with those. And same with your clients, you know, how much of that's going to take our jobs away and how much of it is just something that we need to deal with. So we have a lot of challenges. And in China, there's additional challenges. And those challenges, there have been some epic market failures. So one of them is D&G. They made an ad with this Chinese woman using chopsticks to pick up Italian food. And on the far right side, it says, oh, I think this one's too big for me. Something like that. You know, it's a bit risque. It's D&G. They're trying to be cool. And there was a huge, huge backlash about this ad. And said D&G does not respect Chinese people. So one thing about working in China is people are very sensitive about certain topics, and disrespecting Chinese people is one of them for sure, or conflating Taiwan and mainland China, putting those things together, it's very, very sensitive. So when you're marketing for our clients, we have to watch out and kind of keep an eye on, hey, is there anything risky here or sensitive, politically sensitive? Another one is H&M, Nike, Burberry. They all face the same thing. Xinjiang cotton, ever heard of that kind of thing? So they kind of said there was possibly some slave labor happening in Xinjiang to pick the cotton, basically. And there's a cotton, like a world global cotton initiative that these companies are all part of. And the head of that cotton initiative said it's slave labor. And all of these consumers basically had a major backlash against these companies. Behind that, there may have been some government stuff kind of pushing that. Hey, we're not going to allow the Western companies to say that. So things like that, you have to be really careful. And it just comes out of nowhere. You'll just be cruising along with your client, and the next thing you know, there's like a massive scandal and there's millions of people boycotting your store. So that bit's a bit scary. Mercedes-Benz also, back in the day, the headquarters could say one thing, and in China, they can say another thing, and no one really realizes the connection. But now you can't, because even if it's on a blocked thing like Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, someone's going to see it. And so Mercedes-Benz had like some quote from the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is not officially recognized in China as the head of that. So there was a huge backlash, and Mercedes-Benz got in a lot of trouble. And then the last one was Marriott. This is like, as a marketer, so horrifying. There was a drop-down list of countries that came with a survey, and you had to choose what country you're from. And in that drop-down list of countries, they had Taiwan, it's the top one, and the bottom one says Xizang, which is Tibet, as separate countries. They are not recognized as separate countries by mainland China. They're part of China. So if you put that on a country list, that means that that company thinks that they're separate countries. Okay, some marketing person just grabbed a list and put it on there. They closed Marriott's website, like they took it down for like a month. So you couldn't book a hotel unless you called them directly. So, they do have that kind of power. So, that's all horrifying. It's, we've never really encountered that ourselves because we're careful, and you have to check that stuff. You might have a flag on your website of which country, like which language you want. If you put the wrong flag up, that's a problem. So usually they'll call you and tell you about it, like, hey, what the heck's that? And give you a warning. But if it's like a big major thing, or they're upset with you, or they want to prove a point, then you could be in big trouble. But more common kind of missteps or problems in China that we encounter with our clients is that, like, let's say your website, your global website is super, super slow. That's a very typical thing. So a lot of our clients, the first thing we do is, if they're coming into China for the first time, is, hey, does your website work? Is it in Chinese, and does it work? And if you have YouTube things on it, or like videos, if you have a Google map, if you're using Google font, it's going to slow down the website. So generally, we'll redo the website and host it in China or nearby China, strip out all of those problems with it. People assume that Chinese social media works like the Western ones. It doesn't. They're kind of similar, but they just don't work the same. And you have to really understand deeply how they work, what the nuances are, and how to use them. So I'll show later, like WeChat, the typical content is going to be very long, blog kind of style. It's not like LinkedIn. It's not like a little short thing. So understanding what type of content works is really important. People assume that, hey, we're super popular. We're like Germany's #1, like doohickey brand. They're going to love us. They might not. You have to prove yourself in China. If you're not, top of your category, maybe they know you, maybe they don't. You really have to prove yourself in China. It's not that easy. And the consumers, they have a suspect eye. They really are very careful and choosy about their things. And then on top of that, oh, we already have our personas. You can just use our current personas. Here they are, like from Finland. And you're like, okay, this has nothing to do with Chinese people and the touch points and our positioning. So a lot of our clients, we spend time in the beginning to kind of work out, how that might look in China. So not missteps, or let's say these are little marketing things that we keep an eye on. And we frame it in 3 ways. So one is about the context, about the language, the people, and the history. The second bit's about the content, what type of images and visuals are going to resonate. And the third part is the channel. And the channel is kind of the more complicated part in a way, or maybe the more obvious part, because the channels are completely different. So if you looked at the middle bit, like brand, one of the common things is, do you have a Chinese name? And a lot of companies are like, no, we don't translate our name into any language. Why should we? Everyone knows us. And okay, do you want people to be able to read your name or not? And do you want them to come up with their own Chinese version of your name and start using that, the one that you didn't choose? So that's a serious problem. We did a case for Galeries Lafayette like 20 years ago because they had like 3 versions of their name that people were using in like different newspapers or online. So, we helped them create their name, trademarked it, and started using that officially. And then people started using it correctly. So that's like an example. Freudenberg is one of our clients. These guys, I don't think we made this name, but they have a name. So Chinese characters are really funny. You've got a sound, but you also have a meaning. So each of those characters has different meanings. So that would be, the first one means like technical, ke, and de means virtue. And then bao means treasure. So science, virtue, treasure. Okay, that's our new name. So great. This is a hilarious example. Airbnb entered China. And I know the guys who made their name actually. So sorry, I'm going to slag them off right now. And their name was, they came up with I being. I is love. And B is like together. And ing is welcome. It's kind of like welcoming love. And Chinese consumers were like, is this a love hotel brand? And they really trashed it. And do you know how well Airbnb is doing in China right now? They're not there. They're gone. So also initially, so when we talk to our clients, we're like, do you have a Chinese name? We recommend you do it. It's not a difficult process. It's fast. It takes some creativity and also careful about the trademarking. And you understand your customer and your prospects. So this is about the context. Do you really understand your consumer base? Best Buy came to China and they were there for a while. And they thought, okay, we're going to do what we do in the other places, which is they sell electronics. If you're not familiar, I'm not sure if they have that. It's kind of like MediaMarkt. We're going to have great service and we're going to tell people which product is really the best. And they're going to come to us and they will pay a premium for that service. So we're going to have a higher price for the goods. So of course people came, talked to the service people, checked it out, found like, a new printer or something like that, and then went and bought it online or from a different, cheaper dealer. So they failed because they didn't really understand, while brand is important, they're not really the brand, they're just the reseller. So why bother buying from them and paying more? House of Barbie. So Mattel came in, we pitched for this case and didn't win it, sadly, but maybe it worked out in the end because they were only open for maybe 6 months and then closed down. They thought that this cute kind of Japanese style, because they were very effective in Japan. It worked really well. Cute clothes, like Barbie clothes, Barbie themed everything, super popular in Japan. They brought the same model to China. And Chinese at the time were like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. So they spent a fortune and got nowhere. So context is important. Content I mentioned, video is massive, of course. Everyone's on video. And in the middle, these are WeChat posts. So these are like a typical piece of content that's going out from an official channel from your brand to the followers. And it's very long. It's really like long form blog kind of post. Then on the right side, and like, old design and stuff. On the right side is a festival greeting. So whenever it's Chinese New Year, same as like Christmas or New Year's or something, you send a greeting to all your customers, and then other types of content. So this is kind of typical way that Chinese content's looking these days. And then about the channels. So we live in a parallel universe over in China. So all of those Western channels, every single one of those is blocked. You cannot access them from China. So they have their own ones. WeChat, Weibo, Xiaohongshu or RedNote, I think you've heard about. Douyin, which of course is TikTok. Baidu is the exact equivalent of Google. And like Zhihu is kind of like Quora. Yeah, they're kind of like the same, but kind of different at the same time. So figuring out how they work specifically and which one's going to work for your customers or clients is really an important part of the steps that we take. Yeah, it's just different. It's people get hung up on the platforms, I think, but it's still marketing from my point of view. So it's just kind of figure out the quirks and tricks of the platforms. And that's like the social media universe of China. You've got different search engines, you've got content and discovery, and you've got information channels. So, depending if you're a consumer or if you're a B2B type of client, you'll be using different ones of those. And it's changing all the time. So now we've got some B2B clients coming to us and said, we want to do TikTok. I'm like, okay. I'm not sure what they want to do on it, but we're going to figure it out. And RedNote's also very popular. And because of all this stuff, we made like a flow chart for our clients of like, this one's for B2B, because they always come to us and they're like, look, we want to have a TikTok, like a Douyin, or we want RedNote. And we're like, okay, just step back. Like, why? What do you want to do? Who's your target audience? Let's do some research first and figure out exactly what you're going to be about. So we really push our clients to do some discovery, and you don't have to do a massive survey, but at least you can like talk to some suppliers and partners and figure out your market a bit, and then set up the foundations. And the foundation for at least B2B businesses is going to be having a Chinese website and having your WeChat, these two things. And now we've kind of made a easy package for these B2B guys just to be like, here it is, easy, just get it going. And then of course you can get more complicated as you go. And looking into the future, so of course, geo, you guys are all familiar with that. So generative engine optimization, very hot topic in China right now. How to get onto those AI platforms as an answer. And we have a partner that's developed like a really cool geo tool, actually. One is for China. So it looks at all the Chinese AI platforms and helps you with that. And they've also developed a global one that they're going to launch next month. So I'll probably go share this with you guys to test it out, because it looks like it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah. So we're working with them to test it, and with some of our clients as well. So same as everywhere in the world, how do we get results onto AI? So, and we have a lot of clients asking us about it. Influencers are massive. I mentioned it once before. This guy with the makeup, Li Jiaqi, he's the makeup king of China. He sold 1.7 billion US dollars worth of goods in 12 hours. That's a lot of lipstick. So, and apparently he's very famous that he can identify every shade of lipstick. And you wouldn't think China's the place where like you've got a guy like, hawking lipstick, but you never know. It's kind of a funny place. I don't know how long, they call them KOL in China, key opinion leader. I don't know how long they're going to be ruling, but it's already starting to change from big influencers to smaller influencers, because the platforms have changed. And now it's feeding you intent kind of content as opposed to just your follower content. So, that's also changing. So people who are smaller influencers are becoming more important because their content is more relevant to the searchers. So, and that's everywhere, of course. So my kind of basic themes, and maybe you took something different out of it, but the speed and the pace of change in China is intense. So keeping up with that is really important. And maybe just across all of marketing these days with AI as well. Understanding the local environment and culture is critical. And it feels hard in China, but it's hard in other places too. I saw on the call we had Robert, he's from the Japan AMIN partner. It's complicated in Japan as well. So understanding really language, culture, and the people is critical. True localization takes effort. You can't just stick it into your AI or your translation and come up with that, and it's going to go from there. It's hard. And from my point of view, because I'm old school, marketing fundamentals are still crucial. So with my team, we spend time talking about fundamentals and how to actually do marketing, because it hasn't changed that much fundamentally in terms of how do you reach and touch people and get them interested in your goods. So that's all crazy, right? That's China. I kind of blew through. I don't know how our time is. Just a quick word about AMIN APAC. We're growing quickly. This is like an internal AMIN advertisement. So we've got a bunch of new agencies in APAC, which is really cool. And we're also doing a retreat in April in Bali. So don't you wish you were part of AMIN APAC? So that's super cool. And I got a few slides about Brandigo. I'm not going to spend any time on that, but I think we'll share the deck anyway. So if anyone's interested, or feel free to reach out. And then, 24 is in, still learning. So any questions?
Thanks, Mike. Let's take it from Mike. Right. We do have some time for questions, which is great. Sam, would you mind switching out the screen so we can see our AMIN friends online as well? I'd love to kick us off, and then I'd like to go to any raised hands that we've got online for anyone that's got a question for Mike, and then we'll go around the room. So the first one from me is, you talk about it being a little bit of a parallel universe. I see a lot of similarities to trends in geo, influencer marketing. What would the one thing you would say the Chinese market are far ahead than perhaps more Western markets, and maybe one as well that's where maybe they're behind would be super interesting?
I think just the WeChat itself is so far ahead of anything that we're using in terms of like a tool. And I know that Mark Zuckerberg is like dying to copy it and, trying to pull it in, because we do everything with it. We pay with it. We talk to our friends with it. It's just an epic, indispensable tool.
Right.
And then I think being behind, it's not behind, but it's hard to target people based on, let's say, job and stuff like that. We can use LinkedIn and do campaigns for B2B, and there's no real equivalent there. And the data protections are very tight. So we cannot purchase data, lease data, or anything like that. So, people come to us and say, we want to find all kinds of leads and this and that. It's a hard slog. So I wouldn't say it's behind, but it's far more challenging there.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, James.
Right. Do any of our friends from the AMIN network online or strategic team have any questions for Mike, or am I free to go to the floor here? Oh, is there? I did say I could see the chat. Now I can't, that I've stood up.
Yeah, Robert mentioned it's similar to
Yes.
Line in Japan. Yep.
Yeah, Robert here from Custom Media in B2B in Japan. Mike, you mentioned you spent some time in Japan, right? You studied here. Did you do business here? What are the similarities of doing business in China and Japan? Talk a lot about the differences, right? But what makes this region unique? There's also some similarities.
Oh, it's a great question, Robert. Yeah, I was there doing business. There's maybe it's Asian wide, but there are certain parts of Asian cultures, let's say, kind of blob it all together about giving people face. So, or making them not lose face is one of the themes. So that's important, and to be careful about, you know, preserving people's face. And yeah, what else? I was actually, when I moved from Japan and ended up in China, I thought it would be much more similar, and I thought I was going to kill it. Actually, I got killed because they're so different. You know, Japan's really homogenous in a way, in terms of people really understand what you're thinking without saying it. In China, they're kind of like yelling at you, and it's a very different culture. So I was actually shocked. So even though there are these kind of themes across Asia, you know, let's try to keep harmony within a group and not lose face and things like that, there are like massive differences as well. And I spent a little time in Thailand as well, also completely different. But some of those Asian themes are definitely there. So it's a good question, Robert.
Right, we'll go to the room. We've got Charlie, I think you've got a question. I'll give you the mic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Question was, we've got a global client that when we first took them on 2 years ago, we run digital advertising all over the globe, including APAC. China was going to be one of those countries, and it kind of went down a bit of a road in terms of getting it active, and then we kind of put a pause on it because I think probably it just got a bit scary and complicated. So they're B2B. So I was just going to ask for what would kind of top advertising tips be, specifically kind of WeChat was what we were looking at, and very specifically around sort of data that you can pull out of those platforms and then amalgamate with sort of more of the Western recognized data platforms, I guess. That's kind of looking ahead to a potential complication there.
Next question. That's like the $1 million question right there.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone has the same challenge. First of all, I mean, to ask yourself, is WeChat the right advertising platform? We don't recommend it very often for B2B.
Okay.
Because it's very consumer oriented.
Mm.
So even though I said it's the everything app and do everything, for B2B advertising, it's not great, to be honest. It's not very accurate. It's a bit tricky. And also you basically have to have an entity in China set it up with you. So that means you have to have a subsidiary or your actual business China is a typical thing. Baidu, which is the equivalent of Google, and they've got the equivalent that's a Google AdWords equivalent, basically, for Baidu pay-per-click, works really well. Much easier to deal with. And you can set it up from the headquarters or from the local entity. That would be an easier one to start with, to be honest.
Yeah, we were looking at that as well. I've done that years ago when we could actually run it over here, and you can't do that now. So that was one of the other ones we were definitely looking to expand into. And in terms of taking the Baidu data out and amalgamating it though with the other platforms, is that something that you've?
It's a great question, and you have to be careful about it because you know you can, but you have to be very clear with whoever's clicking on it, like where that data is going, and to be very careful about it. Just like sending that stuff or connecting it automatically to an API that goes into Salesforce could be very troublesome or problematic. So just being careful around that and double checking that, okay, this is legal. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
And not everyone has the answer, to be honest. Even if you ask like Baidu or anyone, they were like, not really sure. It's kind of like, it's fine until it's not fine. And then you get into big trouble. So being careful up front is the way to go.
Perfect. Right. Thank you.
Cheers. Good question.
Cheers. I actually had two questions, but then Charlie, I just asked one of the ones I was going to ask, which is the data thing. But then the other one was like, you set up a business in China. Now you're running a business in China. Does the CCP get involved in any way with you? Do they need managing, or do they just let you get on with whatever you want to do?
Great question. So, right. Do they just let us get on with whatever we're doing? For the most part, yeah. And for the most part, if you have to deal with any government kind of thing, they're on your side. They want to help you, actually, for the most part. As long as you're not crossing, there's some kind of red lines that you just can't cross, and you have to be careful around those. But everyone knows what they are. We did have one funny case where one of my employees was like a Chinese Communist Party member. I didn't even know that, actually, but she was. And she was kind of like registered as that. And there was a problem with one of our clients' websites. And instead of calling us, they called her, which is super weird. And they're like, can you like fix this thing? Not in like a really mean way, but it's kind of like, that's our inside person. So I haven't seen all that much stuff. You know, for bigger companies, it's more, they have to be more careful about stuff, I guess. But, you know, everyone's trying to help each other make a better life and to make money is the vibe from my point of view, at least.
I've got Liz at the back. If you could get the mic to Liz, please.
So you mentioned around the different platforms, obviously what we kind of have here and then the equivalents over there. What is that landscape like in terms of AI and LLMs in particular? Like we obviously spoke around GEO. So what access do they have to which platforms? And also on the back of that, how good are our platforms at giving kind of insight and relevant information about genuine experience there?
Great question. Yes. And the platforms, a lot of them are tied to the specific channels. So Baidu, the search engine, has their own LLM. WeChat, which is owned by Tencent, has their own LLM. Alibaba, which owns Taobao and all that stuff, they've got their own LLM. So they're all drawing more from their own sources. So you're not getting a very objective answer with a lot of them because the WeChat one's taken from WeChat and Baidu's taking from Baidu. And of course, they want to push the answers that are kind of better for their own platforms. So that's definitely like an interesting thing that's quite different, I think, from the Western LLMs. What's the second question? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess kind of interesting. So then how would you say, how good is, I don't know, our ChatGPT or our Gemini at giving genuine insight into what it's like for consumers or targeting consumers? Does that make sense?
In terms of like the Western ones, or you mean
in terms of us sort of researching China as the market?
Oh yeah, I mean they can't see a lot of it, basically. So sometimes we'll use like DeepSeek or one of the local tools that's more relevant. But to be honest, I mean I know that the team uses ChatGPT for a lot of translations now. It's better than the local LLMs. So I don't know, maybe it has a bigger data source. But you know, it changes so quickly. So great questions. Yeah.
Time for one more. Yeah, Hannah.
Relay race.
Hi. A question just off the back of all the others, actually. So you talk about the importance of really having to prove yourself in China, and out of all the channels that you've spoken about, from influencers to the social platforms, have you worked on something or got a really good case study of a campaign or a brand you think have done brilliantly well and what they might have done in that first 3 months?
Yep. I'll use a consumer one. And we brought, have you ever heard of Goose Island beer? It's like big beer, right? It's owned by AB InBev. So they came to China and actually we were their marketing agency for that. And first of all, they knew their target audience really well. And because it's AB InBev, they had like the whole sales team kind of already ready. They just needed to start the marketing. So they were already set up for success, I would say, by having done all the research and understanding how they're going to sell their stuff. We used influencers, we did events, we did massive. We actually said to them, look, we've got 3 campaign ideas. Which one do you like? And they said, let's do all 3. And we're like, oh, okay. How are we going to do that? So, they invested resources into making it a success. So, and that involved a lot of those channels I talked about and just pushing really hard over, let's say, a 2-month period. And everyone heard about it. Everyone knew about it. Really, everyone in their target market was like, awesome. We seeded influencers, hundreds of gift, booze everywhere, swag and all that stuff. So, I don't think that the techniques or the tactics were all that revolutionary, but they just got out there and with the right message to everyone. Oh, did they? That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Right. Should we say a huge thank you again to Mike? Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Mike. And also thank you to the AMIN network who joined us for that great session. I believe we've got it sort of fully recorded. Sorry, I'm being told to stand over here. So, you know, if there is anybody in the AMIN networks, the agencies that want to see that, we'll get a copy of that made available with Mike's blessing, of course. And I think Yenta's gone, but if there's anyone on from IO, I need to know where she buys her posters from for those that were staring at those in the background. Super cool. So thanks again for everyone that's joined us. We're just going to be wrapping up for the sort of 10, 15 minutes with some usual strategic updates. You're all more than welcome to stay on, but equally, if you guys need to shoot and crack on with some other things, I won't take it personally if you drop off. So thank you again to Mike and to everyone at AMIN, and for, where's Amber gone, who just made this all possible, our AMIN ambassador. Thank you, Amber. Great. So I have been asked just to do a much shorter version of outside world news. I usually do about 10 or so updates. I'm just going to do about 4 or 5 today. And then I'm going to hand over to Louise, who's going to give us an update on a few things for a few minutes, and then Nick. So we should hopefully be wrapped up not too far after 10, about 1:15, all being well. So I'm just going to take the microphone out of here so that I can use both hands. By my presentation. Don't know why I'm commentating what I'm doing. Keep you all engaged.
It's not the same.
Thanks, JD. Although I cannot multitask to save my life. Right. So outside world news, for those that haven't seen this before, what I tend to do every fortnight is just pull out some interesting stories that have stood out to me from the last 2 weeks. And some of you are also kind enough to share with me things that stand out. I haven't got the usual depth. I've just got a few small examples that I can hand over to some really exciting updates from Louise and Nick. The first one that stood out to me was how Google shared an update on the 17th of March about how they're now rolling out their personal intelligence to more of their platforms and services. So we know that Google AI mode, Gemini, in the US are starting to pick up on this. And what it means, as you can see by the animation, is that the responses are now going to be much more personalized based on connected Google apps like Gmail or your calendar. So in the example you can see here, where I think they're talking about shopping-based results based on the context that hasn't been made available in the prompt. We know that OpenAI are doing similar things with ChatGPT. So I would expect to see more of this personal context as this kind of rolls out across multiple platforms. Now, the second one, this has always been quite a hot topic, advertising in ChatGPT. And there's quite a few articles out over the past week about how OpenAI's ChatGPT advertising platform is really spearheading this third surface alongside traditional search and social. And then I think it was to a reporter last week, OpenAI announced that they've now reached 100 million of recurring annual revenue for ads. And they've also announced that they're going to be taking the trial beyond the US to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So that's to meet the advertiser demand, the interest that has been shown in those countries. So even though there's been some reports that Charlie shared with us about how the $60 per million isn't really creating that much value for brands, there's still lots of brands globally queuing up to give OpenAI their money to try this out. Third story, 24th of March last week, Figma has opened up its canvas to AI agents now via their Model Context Protocol, or MCP. I was talking to Luke last week, who's our SEO contractor. He's been doing a lot of the sort of connections with Claude, talking to lots of platforms now like Google Search Console, but knowing that this has opened up, it should be significantly reducing that speed between teams that are using this for that design to code handoff. I haven't really checked this out personally. I've not dove into it too deeply, but this has sort of received quite big acclaim where agents like Cursor, which I think is the one that our team used, Duncan is nodding, which is good, and Claude Code. So this is really bringing down a lot of barriers in that development to design interface. Then the fourth story is Shopify launched an app called Tinker last week, which again only surfaced to me when I was doing my sort of broader research. And fundamentally, it's a free app I think this is more designed to the self-serve e-commerce community where they've pulled together multiple tools where you can experiment with creating AI-generated content, images for your products, that type of thing. So it's starting to show the barrier to entry for merchants, for people self-serving, is continued to lower because of what AI is doing. And then lastly, the final story is around content. And we know that we're being asked by a lot of our clients if and how AI should be speeding up things, notably content. And there's a new study that's been done, which was published last week on search engine land by an SEO agency called SE Ranking, where fundamentally they approached creating AI-generated content with very little human oversight. They added it to the blog, and fundamentally, after 6 months, only 3% of that content continued to rank. This is isolated. It's just one study done by one agency, but seeing how the sort of expertise, the human overlay on content, the relevancy of quality rather than quantity, and the way that Google is continuing to combat AI-generated slop. This is a lovely stat that I've kind of put in my arsenal as to when we're talking to customers about content and really differentiating rather than just relying on AI-generated filler for areas where GEO tools might be saying you need to have some content in here. I thought that was a really nice call out that I'm going to have a little bit more of a closer look at myself when those questions and barriers come up. So, as promised, it's just a shorter one this week because of time. I'm going to hand over to Louise, who's got an update for us. Yeah, come grab this one.